Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for inviting the OECD to this conference. It's really great to be here. It's great to hear the discussions among the Nordics about the common labor market. And today we present you some preliminary findings of the project that the OECD has with the Nordic Council of Ministers on the role of public employment services on the common Nordic labor market. A lot has changed since the agreement on the common Nordic labor market 70 years ago, as we heard also a lot about yesterday. So a lot has also changed for public employment services, how they function, what services they provide, what challenges they face. So this project really aims to look at the recent reforms in public employment services and what kind of effects they potentially could have on the common Nordic labor market. But we also look at the topics like digitalization in employment services, the cooperation between employment services and policies and regulations and their interactions and as they are in place in different governance levels. And the project is at the moment about halfway through, so it's a good moment to discuss with you or test with you a bit the preliminary findings. The final report will be launched at the official OECD report and actually also presented to the Nordic Labour Ministerial in November. And there will be also a webinar organized involving all relevant stakeholders, then whether in the end of this year or early next year. And now going to the topic itself and looking at the major reforms and actually 4 out of the 5 Nordic countries we look at in this project are going through or have just gone through or are planning some quite major revisions of their systems to provide active labor market policies. So in the case of Sweden, Denmark and Finland, these reforms are more about the institutional setups, so organization of the service provision, what stakeholders should be involved, the regulation around it, funding models and accountability frameworks. In the case of Iceland, this is still a very much of preliminary stage of a reform, so I understand there are some final approval still needed to go on with it. But once it goes through, it would more likely concern coordination of service provision and actually the content of services. And of course, there are reforms happening also in other countries in the OECD. So the French system is going through a major reform that is actually also concerning mostly about the institutional setup. Similar changes in a way also in Australia, Italy. More other dimensions of the systems are touched upon in the countries like Greece, the Netherlands, and Spain. But well, of course, it's arbitrary what to call a reform, what to call just a big change or a small change. But relatively speaking, it seems that the Nordic countries are at the moment going through more and more major reforms of the systems of employment services. And looking more in depth in the institutional setups of providing active labor market policies, this is a dashboard of the OECD to look at the institutional setups of active labor market policy provision. So the horizontal line essentially shows how far are the decisions on the implementation of active labor market policy provision taken vis-a-vis the ministry in charge of labor policies. And the vertical axis is looking at the role of private providers. And as you see, the Nordic models are not actually very similar, and they will not be similar also after the reforms. So yeah, there are some movements across the table, but still a lot in different places. Nevertheless, actually, the reforms in these countries have been inspired by the systems in other Nordic countries. So, for example, in case of Finland, the idea to address activation of job seekers was inspired by Sweden. The decentralization model was inspired by Denmark, and of course the model will be totally different than it is now, but it will not be exactly the same as in Sweden or in Denmark. And at the same time, Sweden and Denmark are also reforming their models. So in a way, there is no goal to have the same model in place across the Nordics, so that the models will remain different. And indeed, as the last slide showed, that there's a lot going on around the organization of the provision of active labor market policies. So addressing who provides them, whether private providers are involved, what is accountability framework, funding model, and actually a lot is happening also around digitalization of employment services that Alva also will briefly discuss. We see a bit less evidence on addressing actually the content of service provision. So basically how to reach out to the most vulnerable groups, or how to provide them with comprehensive individualized services, or future-proofing the employment services. So we are ready to address, for example, the megatrends. Of course, these dimensions are potentially a bit addressed also within the reforms to change the organization of support, but perhaps not so explicitly at the moment. So just to underline here that even if there is no major change needed regarding the content of services, please make sure that a continuous improvement process is also taking place around the content of the support you provide to people and employers, as this has also a direct and strong impact on people's lives and the labor markets, and actually also the common Nordic labor market. And just to conclude on the reforms of employment services, indeed, there has been inspiration for change, for change or reforms in the Nordic systems of employment services from another systems of Nordic models. But actually, the main driver for reform and change seems to be still political will, and rather than evidence. If there would be more evidence available on the performance of the different systems of active labor market policies, that would actually be a better basis to have more evidence-based policy making. And if the evidence would also concern another Nordic country, then most likely this evidence is also more transferable. The effects would be likely more similar. So when you are now going through these reforms and planning new ones, make sure you also monitor and evaluate these changes, so that it would be creating some evidence for future changes, future reforms, particularly in the other Nordic countries. And actually, the common Nordic labor market has not been addressed in these recent reforms and changes per se. It hasn't been the goal of the reforms. But of course, the common Nordic labor market will be affected by the changes, because these changes have an impact how agile, of, for example, unemployment services, or how effective the services are, how attractive the labor market is. So all these affect the local labor markets, but also the common Nordic labor market, and how the countries are able to address short-term labor market shocks, or mega trends like the green transition, or digitalization, or aging. So it seems that there is more scope for action, even if this would be beyond the reforms or the major changes. Even, for example, to address the skill shortage that we heard, I think, yesterday quite a lot about, and I understand that today's program also will have a few sessions on that. So maybe there is a scope to address this jointly. For example, just a thought, a joint skills mobility partnership with third countries. So the point would be to develop the human capital in the origin country, benefiting the migration origin country, but also the destination country. So it can potentially be done jointly to just to facilitate the whole setup. And thirdly, please make sure you continue to share your good practices, because as we also heard yesterday, you have more shared values, you have similar societies, even your institutional setups are on high level more similar. So for example, the role of social partners is strong in all Nordic countries. So most likely these practices are more transferable, but do not isolate. So please also look beyond the Nordics. There are good practices also out there, and learning from beyond the Nordics will help also the common Nordic labor market in total. Thank you, and I give the floor to Alva.
Perfect. Thank you, Anne. So I have the pleasure of taking you on a whistle-stop tour through the next 3 topics that this project addresses. So firstly, this is the topic of public employment service digitalization. So digitalization is really one of the key mega trends that we are seeing in the world of public employment services, with the vast majority of OECD countries taking steps to enhance their digital capacities in recent years. In the Nordic region, some of the key trends include a broad move by all Nordic public employment services towards hybrid or blended models of service delivery, encompassing traditional in-person service delivery methods with more digital and remote engagement methods. And a lot of this was also driven by positive experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. Within this move to digital services, there is also a broad understanding that this can risk things like digital exclusion, particularly among certain client groups, such as those with limited digital skills, people from vulnerable backgrounds, as well as those without access to the relevant technologies. And we're seeing that Nordic PES are actually taking various mitigation efforts, including, for example, digital skills training, the maintenance of alternative service streams for those who would benefit better from them, as well as the establishment of digital access points actually within PES or local offices. Looking at the national level then, some of the key digital advancements within Nordic public employment services include, for example, in Denmark, the move to ensuring that digital service offerings are now a permanent part of the engagement methods, something that was not possible prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. In Finland in 2022, this saw the implementation of a new Nordic labour market service model, and also the establishment of Job Market Finland, which is an online service platform that also allows the matching of job seekers with vacancies. Iceland implemented a new IT system called Galdor or Magic, and this allowed for more modern and data-driven processes and services. Norway has undertaken quite a large-scale modernisation journey, including in the hopes of improving their case handling processes, and has also recently actually adopted an AI roadmap to kind of guide the use of these more advanced technologies within their organisation. And in Sweden then, there is an ongoing transition underway to gradually replace legacy systems with more modern architecture, including through the deployment of artificial intelligence in various areas. So as you can imagine, this digitalization journey really comes with many opportunities for Nordic public employment services. These opportunities are numerous and include some of the ones presented on the slides here. For example, to be able to aid the targeting of public employment service measures and supports, the ability to be able to serve clients in new ways, including in more flexible manners according to the individual needs of and preferences of a job seeker, the ability to make better use of public employment service data, allowing for more data-driven decision-making, and the ability to be able to have more efficient use of public employment services resources, both financial resources as well as their human resources, hopefully allowing for more time to be able to be spent on more high-value tasks such as intensive counselling of people from vulnerable backgrounds. In the realm of AI then, this presents various opportunities for Nordic PES, including to have more agile and dynamic systems that can maybe better adapt to changing labour market circumstances, and the ability to have more personalised digital services. However, this digitalization journey is not without challenges and is not always a straightforward journey, which means that public employment services will face and need to navigate and proactively address a number of challenges and risks in this domain. So this chart on the right presents some of the challenges that have actually been reported by Nordic Public Employment Services in this digitalization journey. They are numerous, but most commonly they include issues relating to data and information readiness, which can hinder your ability to implement these new, more advanced digital systems, as well as concerns relating to data protection and data privacy. And also several Nordic PEs are actually identifying some of the key concerns in the AI world, including issues relating to transparency, so being transparent around what data you collect, how you use this data, and how decisions are made by AI and digital systems. The need to ensure understandability and explainability in these complex systems, both internally to PES staff and externally to PES clients. And also, Nordic PES are identifying concerns around the need to mitigate the risks of potential unfair, biased, or discriminatory outcomes that could come from AI systems. So really, in the digitalization space, Nordic Public Employment Services should take proactive steps to ensure that the digitalization journey helps rather than hinders the work of public employment services. So within this digitalization journey, one of the key more recent trends is the adoption of artificial intelligence. And we are seeing that within the Nordic region, actually AI is more widespread than on average across OECD public employment services. So we see that now all Nordic public employment services have at least one AI solution in place, compared to AI only being used in approximately 1 in 2 OECD public employment services. However, within the Nordic region, these use cases of AI are actually comparatively seen among a smaller selection of PES activities. So looking at how Nordic public employment services are actually using AI, the most common area for AI adoption is actually in the area of providing information to clients, including most commonly, realistically, through the use of things like chatbots and virtual assistants. So such initiatives are seen in Norway, Iceland, and Finland. In the area of career management and job search support, we see that 2 Nordic public employment services have AI solutions in this area. For example, Sweden has an AI tool that suggests potential occupations to a job seeker based on their current competency profile. And in Denmark, they're actually using machine learning to analyze the skills that are in demand on the labour market by employers, and then to feed this into the job search support and counselling that is provided to clients. Sweden and Finland then have advanced matching systems powered by AI that match job seekers with specific vacancies that have been registered by employers. And Norway and Finland actually help employers with AI in designing the vacancy postings that they are actually registering with the Public Employment Service, including by helping them to correctly identify the occupation of a vacancy. Sweden then has 3 further AI initiatives, and these include an AI system to help detect potentially illegal or discriminatory vacancies that are registered by employers with the PES, the use of AI to help detect fraud within the benefit administration system, and the use of AI to help generate labour market information. So looking at the regulatory and policy environment that Nordic PES operate within, one of the key players in this area is that of GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation. Nordic countries, as with PES across OECD countries, have really rich administrative databases with data gathered from its varied interactions with clients through its different services and measures that they provide. The application of GDPR relating to PES services is to a large degree established and settled within the Nordic region, but we see that there are still some challenges, including through differences of interpretation of these policies across Nordic PES. And this is most common in areas that are sensitive, including in profiling, matching, and within the benefit administration system. So this is relevant also in the use of AI by Nordic Public Employment Services with GDPR and the new EU AI Act that is very quickly coming down the track, bringing a lot of these challenges into focus, particularly regarding the collection and use of data by public employment services, as well as the role in humans in actually overseeing and having the final decision in these digital and AI systems. So in overcoming these challenges in the policy and regulatory space, there's opportunities for Nordic public employment services to better collaborate on these issues and to share their experiences and practices. So another area that this project addresses is the cooperation between Nordic public employment services. And really, we are seeing that this primarily takes place at 3 levels: the local level, the Nordic level, and then at the European level. By local level, we're specifically talking about cooperation by public employment services within these border regions. And we heard a lot about these in the course of the discussions yesterday, so I won't go into these examples in detail, but really this sees cooperation at the local level in these border regions between the relevant public employment services and really focuses on specialised information provision to job seekers that are interested in taking up a job in another Nordic country, but also those employers that are looking to recruit on a cross-border basis. Other initiatives of PES cooperation then take place at the Nordic level. And we see that the primary forum for information exchange at the Nordic level is through the Nordic Labour Market Committee, which is an important forum for exchange, as well as allowing Nordic PES to be able to keep up to date on the latest developments and reforms. Other ad hoc cooperation takes place at the Nordic region, including, for example, through civil servant exchange opportunities, ad hoc questionnaires to a neighbouring PES if you have certain questions or you're developing a certain kind of policy, as well as study visits on an ad hoc basis. Then finally, the final layer of Nordic PES cooperation really takes place through the European frameworks and through primarily existing frameworks like EURES, which supports the free movement of workers, as well as through the European Network of Public Employment Services, which is an important forum for exchange and bench learning within the European Public Employment Service community. So within this area of PES cooperation, we are seeing that overall there are a few key lessons and messages that we have identified. These include that at the European level, we see that Nordic PES are overall very happy with this cooperation, but there are a few caveats or challenges in this domain, including, for example, for smaller public employment services, they see that there is a large resource strain in cooperating in these European frameworks, including due to the demanding reporting requirements that can come with participation. Also, in the context of EURES, for example, some PES report that this system doesn't really capture the full extent of cross-border mobility, as people are becoming more and more self-sufficient in their job-finding journey, as well as in recruitment. We also see that there are gaps in digital capacity between what can be done nationally through matching systems and on the EURES platform. Cooperation is strong overall at the international and Nordic levels, as well as at the local level, but we see that there is a potential area for room for improvement in cooperation on technical topics such as digitalization or IT, where we see that knowledge exchange and awareness of Nordic practices is really not as commonplace. And really, we see that there are some key enablers to this strong Nordic cooperation. Anne touched on some of these earlier, including the shared common values within Nordic countries, including relating to the working life, similar labour market models, particularly the strong role of social partners, and the fact that Nordic public employment services are facing many of the same challenges in their day-to-day work. So finally, to conclude, some of our key takeaways from this project to date include the fact that there is room for improvement in sharing evidence and good practices to feed into the reform agenda in the Nordic region, and also to feed into potential joint actions that could take place within this region. There's also an opportunity to further improve Nordic cooperation on the expert level. So as I said earlier, on topics like digitalization, AI, but also on common challenges that PES are facing, including the green transition, the digital transition, and things like labour shortages. There's also further opportunities to further enhance the benefits of digitalization through the establishment of frameworks to govern AI use and to guide AI use within Nordic public employment services. But also there is a need to really generate evidence around how digital tools work and their impacts on PES clients and staff. And finally, then there is more opportunity to exchange knowledge on the interpretation and implementation of certain legislation and regulation, including most prominently GDPR and the forthcoming EU AI Act. So that's it from us. Many thanks for your attention. We know it was a very fast and jam-packed presentation, and we hope we haven't put you to sleep at this early hour in the morning. But yeah, many thanks for your attention, and we're really happy to be here, and we look forward to the discussion.